Welcome to the Your City podcast, where we get to know our neighbors so that we can be good neighbors. I'm your host, Aaron Williams, and today I'm joined by Margaret Joyce, who is the president of the Dover Chamber of Commerce. We're going to talk to her about the chamber and what it offers to the community, as well as some of the events that they host. Margaret, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Yes. Do you have a shout out that you would like to give to the community of Dover?
I'm going to give a shout out to our friend Dan Demers at the Strand Theater here in Dover.
All right.
It's a nonprofit, which people don't realize. It's a 501c3, and it's a passion project of Dan's. He is a retired Air Force veteran, and he is bound and determined to keep the Strand going. He brings in a variety of programming. It's a true labor of love for him. He does movies, he does dance. He's a dance instructor himself. He teaches dance there, but it's also available for rent. So he's doing everything he can to keep that place open and keeping it going. And it's a real icon here in New Hampshire. You drive by
Yeah.
and you see that marquee, and it just brings back the good old days.
Yeah. I took some dance lessons to prepare for my wedding.
I did the same thing.
Yeah, and I think there's so much value in learning how to dance and learning that movement and rhythm. So
Yeah.
if they're offering dance lessons, I think that's just learning and exploring that skill there's so much joy in it.
Well, there is, and Dan is a very joyous person, and that comes through.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about your role here at the chamber and the chamber's role in the community. What does the chamber offer to its members? Because it's a member-based organization, correct?
Correct. Chambers of Commerce are member organizations. We're 501c6s, so we're nonprofits, but we're not charitable nonprofits. We are member associations. And we offer a variety of benefits. And honestly, we are different things to different members. People join Chambers of Commerce for a variety of reasons. Primarily at our heart, we're a networking organization. And what we do is we create opportunities for our members to get together and network and make those connections and ultimately help their businesses grow.
Yeah.
Then we have other members. We have a lot of nonprofit members who join us to help get the word out. They may be trying to make connections to solicit donations for their 501c3s. And we have members that we like to call the sticker on the door members. They pay their dues every year. We send them a member decal. They put it on the door. They might not ever come to anything, but they see what we do in the community. They support what the chamber does, and they also want to help other businesses in the community grow and thrive. So the activity level varies. We have about 460 members right now, and at any business after hours or any morning mixer, we might have 30 to 40 people, which is less than 10% of the membership, but other members use the membership in different ways. And as we talk about some of the community events that we do here at the chamber, you'll hear more about that. Sometimes they equate it to a gym membership, that you get out of it what you put into it, but that analogy doesn't always work, because some businesses do it because they feel it's the right thing to do.
Okay. So there is more than just like, hey, this is also for you. It's like what you're saying. There are some people who are doing it specifically because they know that you're helping others.
Know that we're helping others, know that we're helping the community, and also they might not come to anything or do anything, but sometimes it helps when people are looking for a service. They might come to the chamber website first. So again, they may not come to any events, they may not advertise with us, they may not do that, but just having, again, that sticker on the door, it's not like the seal of approval type of thing, but some people see it that way. Oh, they're a chamber member. I'll look to them first. Or if chamber members are looking to do business in the community, they may look and say, well, let me see if they're a chamber member before I hire them. So.
Yeah, well, it's a way of like identifying what businesses in Dover are supporting the mission that the chamber has.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So now, one of the things that I noticed when I was looking over the website, where there were a number of different committees in the chamber that are in charge of different things. What's going on with these committees, and I guess what are they doing?
Well, we have a few types of committees. We have our standing committees. We're governed by a board of directors. I report to the board of directors, and they have responsibility for fiscal oversight and strategic oversight of the chamber. And that is certainly one committee, the board of directors. They represent all of our members, essentially. Then we have a couple of other standing committees. One is the ambassador committee, and that's common to a lot of chambers. That helps newer members sort of negotiate or navigate the chamber. It's a little intimidating when you join a chamber of commerce and you start going to events and you don't know anybody. And if you're at a business after hours, you might be nervously clutching your glass of wine, and our ambassadors are there to say, "Oh, hey, I'm so glad you came. Let me introduce you to so and so. They're a realtor as
They're
well,"
the
or
icebreakers.
they're the icebreakers. They also follow up in between events and say, "Hey, we have a morning mixer coming up. I hope you'll come. Hope to see you there." So we try to partner them up for the first couple of years of the chamber membership to help them navigate until they're more comfortable and to make sure they're using their chamber benefits to get the most out of it.
Yeah.
So that's a really important committee of the chamber. Then we have government affairs, and many chambers have this in some iteration. It might be called a public policy committee because we sometimes will take a stand on issues that might affect our membership, whether it's a letter of support or testifying in front of the legislature, or just being informed about those issues. So that's a very common chamber committee, and ours
Yeah.
is pretty active. We meet monthly.
Okay.
We have a business and education partnership committee that's also fairly common to chambers. What we try to do is make the connection between education and business because today's students are the workforce of tomorrow.
Sure.
So we have some events that we do in that realm, a few things that we're trying to do again to help with the workforce. Right now, that's the biggest issue we hear from our members. You hear it every day on the news.
Not enough
Not enough
workers.
workers. So, it's important to work in that realm. Then there are the I would call the more fun committees, and our community events manager uses the acronym CVS, like the store.
Okay.
C, committees. If you want to be engaged with the chamber, join a committee. You'll meet lots of great people. You'll have some fun. Volunteer for an event. And then the S is for sponsorship. So we invite our members to be part of our committees to help plan and execute these events. Apple Harvest Day is huge. We
Hmm.
couldn't do that without the help of many, many, many volunteers. But at the core, there is a committee that helps plan it every year. The annual awards committee, they convene a few times a year to help select the annual award winners. We have our Kachiko Arts Festival committee. Their responsibility is to help book the acts. They have to sift through all the submissions. We have hundreds of people who submit to play at the Kachiko Arts Festival every
Hmm.
year, and we have a committee much more knowledgeable than I am about music who come in and listen to the bands or make feedback or try to make sure we have different genres covered. So some of those are we have the standing committees and we have ad hoc committees and event committees. So the chamber is able because we don't have a huge bureaucracy. We're able to convene committees as needed. So
Are people on these committees chamber members or is it chamber employees?
well, we always have a chamber employee as a liaison to the committee,
Okay.
but it's chamber members for the most part.
Hmm.
That's sort of a prerequisite to be on a committee is you would have to be a member of the chamber.
Okay.
Um, the only exception I can really think is for our government affairs committee. We do invite there's a couple of elected officials who come on to give
That
updates.
don't have
Uh,
businesses.
Correct. Although there is a level of chamber membership, again, not unique to us, but an individual membership.
Oh,
So
okay.
people can join as individuals. And oddly enough, for the Government Affairs Committee, we do have quite a few people who join as individuals because they like coming to that meeting to hear about what's going on, to have sort of a say in that. So yeah, it's a lot of committees, a lot of meetings, but it promotes member engagement and it's
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
important. And we're four full-time people, one contracted employee. There's no way we could do as much as we do without their help.
Yeah, and a lot of the people on these committees are volunteers, correct? Like
Mhm.
they're not getting paid. They're just volunteering their time to help the
Correct.
chamber achieve its mission.
Correct.
Now, when I'm hearing you describe all of this, is that just like the normal process that how the chamber makes decisions? Because it seemed like in all the different areas where you guys are engaging the community, you kind of have a committee, and you said you'll have ad hoc committees.
Right.
Is that just kind of how y'all approach making decisions? Is there like a final say so on things that comes from somebody, or is it
Well,
always democratic like that?
no, it's not always democratic. we would be the final decision maker, and really only because we know what our bandwidth is.
Okay. Okay.
There are a lot of great ideas out there, and that's sort of the good and bad of committees is you have a lot of super enthusiastic, energetic people who have a lot of great ideas, but it's not always practical or easy to execute those
It's like
ideas.
the mice who are like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, we'll tie a bell to the cat and we'll know where he's at all the time." And it's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
well, who's gonna
Who's
do
going to
it?"
tie the belt to the cat? So that's kind of where we are. But at the same time, these are people who come up with ideas that we just haven't thought of ourselves. Not that we're not, creative people, but sometimes we get pretty bogged down in the day to day.
Mhm.
So it's nice to have that outside. And interestingly enough, our staff, I think the longest, well, Donna, our finance person, has been around the chamber for 30 something years, but I've only been with the chamber 4.5 years or so. And I have a staff member who just started, another one who's been here a year, another one who's been here 6 years. We have people around the table who have been working on some of these events. They have a much longer history than we do. So sometimes we'll say something and they'll say, well, we tried that back in 1982. So some of our volunteers and our members have longer histories than we have,
Mm.
and they have more knowledge. So they bring that to the table.
Very cool, very cool.
Mm.
Wow. Now you mentioned Apple Harvest Day and you mentioned the Cochico Arts Festival.
Yes.
What all events does the chamber host for the community of Dover?
Those are the two biggies,
Mhm.
Apple Harvest Day being the biggest. We shut down all of Central Ave right down to Henry Law Park, and we invite about 60,000 of our closest friends to come and visit Dover for the
Yeah.
day. And when you think about it, the population of Dover is just over 30,000. So essentially, we're doubling that. And it can be great or not so great for merchants. Most of them see it as very positive because we're bringing people into the community who might not otherwise be here, but we are essentially blocking egress to a lot of businesses that
Mm.
day. So the ones that are on the festival footprint actually get a spot for Apple Harvest Day, and hopefully they'll reap some of the benefits. So that's a big one.
I can see how for somebody who's selling retail, they're like, yes, foot traffic, but somebody who's like a dentist or, is kind of like appointment scheduled, they're like,
Y-
what are you doing?
Yeah, and even restaurants, it can go either way because are they going to get the foot track? Are they not? So it can go both ways. But for the most part, it's very positive, and it wouldn't be have going on for 38 years if it wasn't so
Yeah.
positive. When you think about what it started as a very small craft fair on Orchard Street, it was just Orchard Street, which is right off Central Ave.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was just a dozen crafters or so, growing into over 300 vendors, 100 volunteers, about 60,000 weather dependent attendees. It's grown into an incredibly huge event.
Yeah.
The next biggest one would be Cochico Arts Festival, and that's a summer-long arts festival that we do, and we have live music on Friday nights, concerts down in Henry Law Park. On Tuesday morning, we do kid shows, 6 different kid shows, and then we just started a couple of years ago a visual art showcase. We invite local artisans to come in and set up booths and hopefully sell their products. One of the keys here is through sponsorship, we're able to keep these events free and open to the public,
Yeah.
and that's important to us. If you come to a Cochico Arts Festival concert on a Friday night, our attendees tend to skew older, but we kind of pride ourselves on that we're giving these people that maybe they're on a fixed income an
Mm.
opportunity to enjoy some live entertainment at no cost to them. So it's really a point of pride for us. And same with Apple Harvest Day. You can, if you've got 2, 3, 4 kids, sometimes going to an event can get expensive if there's admission fees. And this way they can just come out and enjoy a festival free of charge.
So the Cochico Arts Festival is not one day or one
Correct.
event. It's a continuous
Correct.
like series of plannings
Correct.
and it's live entertainment
Hmm.
at Henry Law Park. And
Hmm.
do you guys do like movies or is it
Yes.
always okay?
We do movie nights. We used to do them in the Cochico Courtyard, dinner and a movie. And I know some people would like us to bring that back, but logistically, that was a little bit more of a challenge to do it there and a bit more expensive. But we do, the blow up screens that they
Mm.
have. We've done some of those down in Henry Law Park, and those are pretty well received. And then we try to incorporate whatever is going on at the Woodman Museum here in Dover. They do a lot of arts programming, so we try to promote that under the Kachiko Arts Festival umbrella because it's not just us doing art. We try to incorporate what's going on at the Strand. He's got a lot of movies and comedy nights, and we don't get into comedy nights, that type of thing. We don't want to compete with him, but we
Mhm.
try to pull that under the umbrella. A local radio station does concerts called Shark in the Park on Wednesday nights, and again, we promote that under the Kachiko Arts Festival umbrella.
What does that name mean?
It's their radio station, and whatever the call letters are, I think it kinda spells out the shark, so the radio station is called The
Ah,
Shark.
okay, okay.
Yeah,
That
so
makes
they
more
call it
sense.
Shark in the Park, which, it's a catchy title, and they attract a younger audience, which is nice, so we're hitting different audiences
Yeah.
with those, but those are also free, which is wonderful.
Yeah. When you're putting on these, is are those before I move on to my next question? So you've got those two. Are there others?
There are. We've got the Festival of Trees, which honestly is a favorite of the staff here. I think it's probably because Harvest Day is over and we can all go. "Oh." But Festival of Trees is beautiful. We do it down at the River Mill here in Dover, and it's a gorgeous venue in the mill. And we auction off beautifully decorated trees that businesses decorate.
Christmas trees?
Yeah, yeah,
Ah,
yeah, and Santa comes, and again, it's free and open to the public, so you can bring your family for a visit with Santa, and you don't have to buy a tree, but if you would like to bid on a tree, you can, but just coming and seeing them is a beautiful Christmas tradition, and we do it the same night that the city lights up their Christmas trees, so people make an evening of it, which is nice.
nice. Yeah, that I've seen that happen before. We went to in Strawberry Bank.
Oh, yes,
They
the
did the
candlelight
candlelight
stroll,
stroll,
oh,
and
that's
they
an
had a
amazing event.
set of trees as
Yeah,
well. So I
yeah.
assume it's similar to that.
Yeah, a lot of communities do them. They're just beautiful, beautiful events. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a great way to get, some beauty. I feel I interviewed the Arts Commission. I bet they appreciate that. You get some beauty and you get some local involvement in creating something. Yeah,
Right.
that's cool.
Right. Right.
So the Festival of Trees,
Yeah.
and is there another one or is that just those
Those are
three?
the big, we have a lot going on, but those are sort of, I would say, the signature community events. And I know we're gonna talk a little bit about Citizens Leadership Academy as well. That's
Yeah, yeah.
something else that we do. And then our business programming is just ongoing. We engage in a lot of forums in addition to the traditional business after hours and morning mixers. We do a housing summit every year because that's a huge, issue here is
What is a housing summit?
well, attainable housing. It's there is just not much inventory, and what is out there is not necessarily affordable. And affordable is an ambiguous term because what's affordable to you might not be affordable to me. So, what does that mean for a community? How does that translate if people don't have a place to live? How are you going to get workers? So, it's an economic issue.
Mhm.
It's not just a social services issue. It's an economic issue.
Okay.
You've got to your workers have to have a place to live. And Dover has been kind of at the forefront of what it's doing in terms of housing. The city has been very good, but there are also a lot of community members who have just sort of taken the bull by the horns and created their own solutions. So we do a summit around that every year. It doesn't solve the problem, but it brings different people together to talk about the issue.
Mhm.
We do a mental health summit every year because ever since COVID, particularly, it's been a struggle for people. And again, that's an economic issue
Mhm.
because if your workforce is struggling, and it's also hard for employers, how do you have that conversation with somebody that you suspect is either having a mental health or perhaps a substance use disorder issue? How do you have those conversations? Or maybe it's a family member. So we do some of these forums in the community as well.
Okay.
So those are business programs. Now, the Citizens Leadership Academy, which I know is something you're interested in,
I'm very
Aaron. Yeah,
interested in talking
it's
about that. Yeah.
and I don't know that a lot of other communities do this. We've been doing it, I think, since around 2014, and anybody can sign up for it. Again, it's free. We get a sponsor. And what the chamber, again, is very good at is convening. We have the ability to get the word out and sign people up, but we're not the subject matter experts. So it's a series of 6 nights. It usually takes place in the fall
Okay.
and one day. And we bring in a different city official or officials each during each session to talk about a different part of city government.
Okay.
At the end, there's a little graduation. The mayor comes in and we give each person a certificate. And they kind of joke the test is or the exam, the final exam, they hand out a volunteer sheet because you need people. You don't just need elected or paid city officials. You need volunteers on all these committees. The
Yeah.
planning commission are volunteer. The conservation committee, the solid waste management. Now there's an exciting committee, but it's needed and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a so what happens is a lot of these people, and Mayor Carrier has told me this many times, that people who come out of Citizens Leadership Academy end up being engaged and involved citizens. They join committees.
Yeah.
So, or they may not. They may they new to the area, they want the information, and they may not. But for the most part, a lot of the people who are currently sitting on these volunteer committees for the city have gone through citizens leadership and something intrigued them.
Yeah.
So we have an overall presentation by the city manager on the budget and how the city works. We have a presentation from economic development on planning for the city. We have the librarian come in, the head of the recreation department. We go to the fire station
Yeah.
and get a tour and some hands-on activities there. We go to the police station and we tour and we sit down with the chief and his team and learn about their philosophy of policing in the city of
Hmm.
New Hampshire. In the city of New Hampshire, the city of Dover here in New Hampshire. And then one of it's a highlight, believe it or not, is when we meet with the head of public works and we do tour the wastewater treatment and we go to all of these public works facilities and it's eye-opening for people.
That's what I was just about to say is like what you're doing is you're, explaining to people, hey, this is how your city works.
Mhm,
And you're giving them an opportunity to meet people and build trust
mhm,
with the people who are running the city. And for a lot of people, they've probably never had that opportunity.
right.
They've never been able to meet the police chief or the fire chief or the wastewater management
Mhm,
chief,
mhm.
foreman, whatever his role is.
Director of Public Works for the city of Dover.
The
He's
director of,
an extraordinary human being.
all right.
Incredible, incredible man.
Yeah, they've probably never had a chance to
Mhm.
get to see all of that.
Right,
So, you
right.
know, man, I that's why I wanted to talk about this because it seemed like such, I'd never seen any other city do this,
Mhm,
and it seemed
mhm.
so unique. And you were talking about how a lot of the people who go through this, their engagement, their involvement
Correct.
ramps up.
Correct.
They okay.
And that's sort of the success. You want a more engaged and educated community,
Yeah.
even if they don't end up joining a committee, at least they understand how it works. And they've sort of put a face to the name. It's very easy to go on Facebook and blast public officials and complain about everything, but you don't really have an understanding of why certain things are the way they are or certain decisions are made. And this does open some eyes to that process.
How did this get started?
Oh, that's a really good question. We were approached by the city to sort of help with this effort. And again, as I said, we are conveners. We're not the subject matter experts. And we said,
Mhm.
okay, we can work with you to put that program together. And we have a very strong working relationship with the city. There's no way we'd be able to close down Central Ave for Apple Harvest Day if we didn't have such a good working relationship. So we were approached to put this program together, and it's been running every year since. Even during COVID, we were able to transition successfully to Zoom. Um, we actually still use it oddly enough because there are so many people who work from home. They still want to get their networking in, and it's
Mhm.
pretty successful. So um, we kept it. Then when we came back, we kept the number small just so we could kind of distance people a little bit. But we haven't missed a beat with that program. It's very popular, and it's not like 50 or 60 or 70 people do it every year. It's only 12 to 15, maybe up to 20 people who
Is
take
that
advantage of it.
a cap that y'all are putting on it, or
No,
is that a
no,
just that's
that seems to be the level of interest that year, and,
hmm.
and that number works. It works well, to have the smaller groups because you can have those conversations with the city officials or when we all go to the fire station and everybody wants to take turns crawling through some of the training things. A smaller number does work, but it'd be great if more people wanted to do it.
Yeah, more people engaged, more people
Mhm,
involved. Yeah,
mhm.
absolutely. What are some of the challenges that you see come up pretty often when you're putting together stuff like you're convening or organizing all of
Mhm,
these events? And I assume that there's searching for financing, searching for people to volunteer, searching for people to fill those roles.
mhm.
What all kinds of challenges are you guys having to solve when you're putting together Apple Harvest Day or the Leadership Academy?
Mm. Well, you've hit all of the right notes there. So certainly financing. We are a membership organization, and people pay dues to be members of the chamber, but that makes up less than 50% of our operating budget. So all of these different events that we do, we get sponsors for them. The sponsorship gets publicity for the organization. It usually comes out of their advertising or marketing budget. So we're able to get their logo out there. Very often there are speaking opportunities involved with that or banners at events, that type of a thing. So it's constant looking for sponsors.
Yeah.
So that is definitely a challenge, although we're fortunate we've got some great partners here, but always looking for new partners. And then you also mentioned volunteers. Apple Harvest Day alone takes 100 volunteers,
Mm.
and it's not very exciting to think about. But when you've got 60,000 people downtown, you generate a lot of trash. And trash is one of the details that
Hmm.
who wants to do trash? But we are fortunate that we get a core of people every year who come out and they're game and they do it. Same at Kachiko Arts Festival. At the end of the night, those trash bins are full. A lot of people will go to a local restaurant and get something, a pizza or sandwiches to bring down and enjoy during the festival. At the end of the night, those trash bins are full. So yours truly and the volunteers are, taking care of the trash, trying to leave the place cleaner than we found it.
Hmm.
So that is important. So you've definitely hit on the two biggest challenges. And then I would say with Apple Harvest Day, it's the sheer enormity of it. There are so many moving parts. We need to park people outside of the city, so you have to coordinate with that. We get shuttle buses to bring people in, so we have to coordinate all the shuttle routes. We have to coordinate with the police. Because we're gluttons for punishment, on the same day as Apple Harvest Day, we do the Apple Harvest Day 5K road race. Yeah. So that's a whole nother because you're shutting off even more roads.
Hmm.
We've got to register. We have about 500 people who do that road race. So it's a lot. Then the other thing that I think people don't realize, it's expensive to put on events. Uh, Insurance alone. It's
Ah,
extraordinarily expensive to get event insurance because anything can
event
happen.
insurance.
Anything can happen. Somebody could bring a dog to an event and the dog, bite someone or something happens. A
Yeah.
piece of equipment could fall on somebody. So event insurance is extraordinarily expensive, but you have to have it.
Okay.
We also have to pay because we shut down all these streets. We pay for police and fire detail.
Hmm.
That's expensive, but we have to have them. It's a public safety issue. They have
Sure.
to be there. There's no question. Porta potties.
Yeah.
They don't come free, and you need a lot of them when you've got a race and 60,000 people. Porta potties are very expensive.
Maybe
So,
like, couple of them, couple dozen.
yeah, well, and it's funny because I took pictures. I was at it was a Boston Athletic Association race that my son was competing in, and there were 10,000 athletes competing in this race, and I just couldn't believe the number. I took a photo because I could not believe the number of porta potties, but that's because all of the athletes all have to go at the same time right before the race. So we don't need that many because it's,
Yeah.
throughout the day, our 60,000 people don't all have to go at the same time. I can't believe we're exploring this deeply, but you asked, so it's things like that that people don't realize go into the logistics
Yeah.
behind the scene. It's not just a case of setting up a few tables and, putting out your wares. There's months and months and months of planning that go into it.
Hmm.
And I'm always in awe when I go to large scale events, having worked here for 4 years, just seeing events that go off flawlessly. I'm like, that's impressive. Or if I see something like, oh, we should try that
Hmm.
because events are a lot of fun
Yes.
for that day, but they're a lot of work.
I used to go to conventions. Uh, yeah, I guess I would probably still go to conventions in the future, but you don't think about these things. You don't think about how invisible the administration of it
Right.
is, right? Because
Right.
if an event is well organized, you never encounter anything that would make you think about
Right.
that. Everything just works.
Right.
It's not a it's when something breaks, when something falls
Yes.
apart, that's when
Yes.
you're like,
Yes.
whose fault
Yes.
is this?
Right, right. And and it inevitably happens. And I think that's something that you learn over time, that it's not all going to go perfectly and everything is not in your control. But you also have to learn that even if 99% of things go right and 1% goes wrong, you're going to hear from people about the 1%. And it's too bad, but it's human nature. And you have to steel yourself to focus on the 99%
Mhm.
that was good, not
Yeah.
the 1% that was bad, but I think that's a learned skill over time.
Yeah. I kind of want to revisit something, and we don't got to get super deep into it, but I
Mhm.
just want to understand it a little bit more. You said event insurance.
Mm,
And my question
mhm,
with that comes to my mind is you're inviting people to come to the downtown of Dover.
mhm.
What's different than just the businesses that already exist in Dover inviting people to come down? Like, what's the difference there that makes it to where you are now liable for accidents versus just somebody going to downtown Dover of their own accord?
When you do events like this, working with cities, or I assume any municipality, you
Mhm.
have to file we call it here a block party permit. So we have filed a permit. So we own the permit for that day.
Okay.
So, in other words, anything that happens on that footprint is under our purview, which means that we have the ability, if somebody is not acting accordingly, we can ask them to leave because it's our event.
Oh, so the
But by the same token, we have the responsibility for
yeah,
anything
yeah,
that
yeah.
goes
So
wrong.
the
Yeah.
the public space temporarily is lended.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah. So for
okay.
that day, it's our space. So we put banners up all over town. Generally, banners are not allowed. Dover has a pretty strict sign ordinance for very good reasons. You can't just be putting stuff up everywhere. But that day, we have all of our, say, sponsor banners up there because they are part of the permit for that day. It's essentially the Greater Dover Chamber of Commerce's space for the day.
Oh,
But alternatively, we are responsible then if something goes wrong. And again, we partner with the police. We pay for the police. We have EMS there. We pay the fire department because somebody has a medical emergency. And I don't even want to say it or think about it, but when you have crowds of people, and it's not a gated event, anybody can come in. There are many things that could happen. So you need public safety
sure.
there, and unfortunately, you need the insurance to
Yeah,
cover if
yeah,
anything
yeah.
happens.
It makes sense to me now because I was like, well, it's happening in public space. Why would you be liable for it? But the way that you described it,
Mm,
that makes sense to me now. Okay.
And it has to remove the liability from the city. The city cannot be responsible
Mm,
for that. If they were, they would say no to any public gathering. They would say, nope, you can't use Henry Law Park for your concerts, or no, you cannot shut down. If the responsibility was always
yeah.
on them because if something went wrong.
It's just one of those things you never think about.
No, you don't. And like I said, it's not inexpensive. So
So you're the president of the Dover Chamber of Commerce.
yeah,
You have a lot of decision making power. I assume you're kind of like the final say so on many
on
decisions.
many, not all, but yes.
What is your vision for the chamber? Where do you hope that the chamber can be in 5 to 10 years?
Mm. Now that's a great question, but that is something that would be decided with the board of directors in terms of they have responsibility for strategic oversight, and if there was any strategic planning. I couldn't decide to tomorrow to open up a lemonade stand and say from now on we're going to have a coffee shop here. That would be a board decision. The day-to-day administrative are more mine. Having said that, yes, the board expects me to plan for the future and come up with ideas. So, what is my vision for the future? As we've talked about, this chamber is very much ingrained in the community here.
Hmm.
Um, every chamber has a different personality. You'll find many of the chambers up north, or our friends in Hampton and Portsmouth, are more tourism focused. Folks in Manchester and Nashua maybe more business. We are very heavily embedded in this community, and some of the things we do, you think, oh, why does the chamber, like an apple harvest day or some of these other things? We do our annual awards every year. That's coming up. and we recognize Citizen of the Year, Volunteer of the Year. We do an Educator of the Year. We give a scholarship to students. So, one of the things I would like to explore with the board is potentially setting up a 501(c)(3), which is a charitable not for profit, to accept money in for those types of purposes. We could apply for grants maybe to pay for some of the acts for Kachiko Arts Festival, but we give a stipend to the Educator of the Year and to the scholarship winner. Right now, when people sponsor our events, because we're not a 501(c)(3), it's not tax deductible. We're
Mm.
a 501(c)(6), not a 501(c)(3). But if we change that a little bit, that would open up other opportunities, other giving opportunities. We could apply to grants from foundations and perhaps extend our reach a little bit in the community.
So you're hoping to find new ways, and it sounds like a little bit of kind of like organizing yourself in a different way so that you can give back more.
Yes, but we wouldn't change. We would have to stay a 501(c)(6) because we are a membership organization.
Mm.
And just so people understand what that means, if you look around the state, there are organizations like the Retail Bankers Association, the Retail Merchants Association, the Car Dealers Association, New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant. Those are all 501(c)(6)s. They're membership organizations. Were organized a certain way. 501(c)(3)s are charitable, not for profits, and those are what you might think of more traditionally as a nonprofit, somebody who's organized with charity as
Yeah,
their
yeah, yeah.
mission. So we would form a separate 501(c)(3). We cannot change our status.
Mm.
We are by IRS law a 501(c)(6). But many chambers of commerce, many membership organizations have a separate foundation that they can take money in and then use it for charitable purposes.
Okay, gotcha. Very cool. And you've previously studied, I was looking at your resume and I
Mhm.
was like, oh my gosh, she's studied here. She's worked for the state of New Hampshire. Like
Correct.
you've done a lot of public administration and you've
Correct.
studied for that. How have all of your previous experiences prepared you for this role in
Mm,
Dover?
mhm. Well, it's kind of a funny question because I have done a lot, and I was not necessarily looking at the time on this job, and a longtime friend of mine, who's a chamber member, actually mentioned that the job was available, and I said, "Oh, well, thank you for thinking of me, but I'm not really looking." And then I looked at the job description. I said, "Oh, that's really what I love. That's, I miss that. I miss doing that." And I applied for the job. And yes, everything that I've done in the past is needed here at the chamber. I've worked in fundraising. I worked at Co-Brown Northwood Academy as their fundraiser for 10 years. I've worked in the state. I worked in the tourism office, so marketing and destination. I've done that. I worked in the state's economic development office, so I've
Hmm.
done economic development. Um, my most recent job before I came here, I worked for the Division of Emergency Services and Communications.
Hmm.
Now you'd think, how is that relevant? Well, then there was a worldwide pandemic. So I was, crisis management and crisis
A
communication.
lot of
Yep,
businesses and
done that.
members,
Yeah.
a lot of businesses and members are coming to you, "Hey, what do we do?" And, you're trying to figure that out. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, we're not the subject matter experts, but during COVID, we shifted a lot of what we were doing to help our businesses. But at the same time, we were struggling to keep our doors open. Chambers around
Hmm.
the country, the state and the country were struggling because we depend on events for income. We depend on membership. If our members are struggling, they're not paying dues. So it was a struggle. But we partnered with the New Hampshire Small Business Development Center and the at the larger level, at the national level, the Small Business Administration to help our members access a lot of those aid programs, the federal aid programs, the state aid programs. We put on all kinds of webinars about those. And again, not the subject matter experts. We brought in an attorney. We brought in someone from the SBA. We brought in a lender from a local bank. We brought in an accountant from one of our member accounting firms
Mhm.
to talk to our members about those programs. So again, we're the conveners. We bring people together and create those opportunities. So yes, my background is varied, but a piece of pretty much every job that I've ever had is useful here.
Yeah.
Budgeting, very important. And the Masters of Public Administration at the University of New Hampshire is something I did for my own personal fulfillment, but it was relevant. It's still relevant, and good to be able to draw on that education. And the funny thing is, with that major, I've met so many other people who are also involved in that program.
Because you
It's
studied with them.
study with them, or they're studying now, or they're a graduate of, and
Mm,
UNH does a good job of convening. They'll have speakers, and you'll go and you just meet different people. They want you to mingle with the current students to talk
yeah,
about
yeah.
your career. So it's been kind of neat to meet those people. But yeah, working at emergency services and communications, you would think, how is that relevant? But then the pandemic.
Were there any ways that you felt like you came into this role in some ways unprepared?
Y- I'm the kind of person who and I'm not a young person. I always feel like I'm learning. So I I'm always questioning, am I doing enough? Am I doing the right thing? So unprepared, maybe not, but I feel like there's always ways to learn
Mm,
and do more. I've worked at membership organizations before, so that's important. The relationships are so important. Maybe an interesting perspective here is the partnership between us and the city.
mhm,
That is something unique and different that I've really started working more on, and it's been a wonderful relationship. When I first joined the chamber, I was a little surprised that there were city officials on the board.
mhm,
That seemed counterintuitive to me, and now they are some of the most valued members
mhm.
of the board, and just incredibly smart, astute people. I have such respect for them, but building those relationships is something I would say new to me. But yeah, I've had a varied background, and little pieces from here
Yeah,
and there kind of prepared me for this, but I never wake up in the morning and say I know everything. There's always, you
yeah,
can learn from everybody,
always
and
learning.
it,
I think that's a great attitude to have,
it
is
is,
to,
yeah.
approach things in a way of like, hey, you know, I might think I might think and feel confident
Mm,
acting in this
mhm.
space, but always be open to that unknown and that ability to learn more about what's
Yeah,
going on.
and that's important to me.
Mhm.
It really, really is. And I agree with you. I feel confident in my abilities, but I don't feel that, yes, I have reached a point where I now know everything. That just is not the case. And I did my
Maybe
graduate
one day,
program.
right?
Maybe one day I can aspire to that. Yeah. But I did my graduate program late. I didn't do it when I was, a kid. I did it when I was older, because you can learn more.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. You mentioned that this role, somebody mentioned it to you and you were like, Psh, nah. But you looked at it and you were like, hmm, what was that second opinion? What attracted you to this?
Yeah. Well, I missed sort of being part of a larger group. My job at emergency services and communications was a little bit more insular. Um, Even though we had a statewide effect, it was extremely insular. Here, every day I'm doing something different. I'm just meeting with all kinds of new people, whether they're members, city official, going to other chamber events. That collaboration, where
Hmm.
there's nothing insular about this place. We operate a visitor center here. Where I worked at my previous job, it was like Fort Knox. You had to go through 100 different. I got locked out once because I didn't have access. I'm locked out. And here we are part of the community. We do some crazy things here. Right now we have a clothing drive going on for one of our members. We're the gathering spot, so we have community members coming in all day long, dropping stuff off, and um, we collect plastic bags of all things. The Lions Club is doing that to keep them out of the landfill, and then they send them to Trex, who turns them into benches that will be located throughout the community. Well, we have people coming in all the time to drop off their plastic bags. So we're really part of the community. We have a lot of groups who come in here and have their meetings here. We're sitting here in this lovely conference room,
Hmm.
and the Dover Women's Club has their meeting here. So I've gotten to know those women who are incredible. The Dover Rotary has their executive board meetings here once a month, and just what an incredible group of folks they are. So my my world, if you call it, is, just not the people in my immediate office. We've got anybody can walk in off the street. We have visitors who come in thinking of moving to the area. Well, I mean, even yourself, I'd love to know how the heck did you end up in Dover? But we had someone come in last week. They were moving to New Hampshire. Well, where do you live now? Austin, Texas. Well, how did you get from Austin, Texas to,
Yeah.
Dover, New Hampshire? So,
Well, if you want to know, we did an interview with Chris
okay.
Parker.
Yeah.
And so we appeared on his podcast,
Yeah.
my wife and I, talking about how we ended up here.
And
Well, I mean, there's a lot to it. It was like a 30-minute conversation. So
wow.
I can tell you more afterwards. But yeah,
Yeah.
there was a
But
lot.
that's fascinating though, that the people really love the walkability of it, but the proximity to all of these wonderful amenities that the
Mhm.
state has to offer. We've got the train here. You can get down to Boston. There's a lot of wonderful things to recommend it. But I'm continuously surprised when people walk in and they've discovered Dover, and this is where
Yeah.
they want to
All
be.
right. So it sounds like what really attracted you to this place was kind of the community feel, the
Yes.
engagement that
Yes.
they were providing, as well as the diversity of responsibilities. It's not just one thing every day.
Right.
Every day is a new opportunity and a new challenge, and you just kind of you get to do that learning
Right.
that you were
And
talking about.
everybody is different. Everybody has some people like the predictability of coming into the same office every day. I'm going to do the same things for 8 hours, and I'm going to go home. I thrive more on the diversity, and the other duties as a side, if you
Yeah, yeah,
will,
yeah,
because you just don't know. I mean, one day you're doing this, and one day you're hauling trash. The next day you're doing a podcast.
yeah. Makes making a schedule and scheduling vacation difficult, I bet.
Out the window, yeah. Yeah. And that doesn't bother me, but I know that there are people who need that predictability.
Mhm.
So to each his own, and this is a good environment for me because I am good and have learned over the about rolling with the punches. And one thing I'll tell you that is my mantra around here, my coworkers will say that I say this all the time. If you're not having fun at the chamber, you're not doing it right. Something is wrong. And I also say we are not saving lives here. We are not curing cancer. We're doing good work. We're doing important work. But this is a place and I've got young folks who work here, starting out their careers. This is a place where you can try new things, where you can explore.
Mm.
I have one staff member who's just so incredibly creative. But when I first came here, she would say, "Well, what about I have this idea?" So let's hear it. And oh, that's great. Let's give it a try. And she'd say, "Well, what if it doesn't work?" I say, then we won't do it again. But is anyone going to die? No. I'm like, well, let's try it. This is a place where you can learn and grow. Like I said, we do good work. We're very, very proud of our work,
Mm.
but keep it in perspective.
Yeah, yeah. You've been doing community work for decades.
Mhm.
What originally drew you to doing community work? Why did you want to be involved in this?
I have worked in the private sector, and it was not for me.
Mm.
And I think, and it's not that I'm such a noble person or anything, but at the end of the day, I guess I want to feel that I've contributed or made a mark or made a difference.
Yeah.
And again, it's not because I'm this, wonderfully altruistic person, but um, working in the private sector, I've learned a lot, I've done a lot, but it wasn't as fulfilling and personally rewarding to me. Um, the first job I had that was not private sector was working for the state. And I loved every minute of it. And
Mhm.
and from the first day, it was go, 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 go. Absolutely loved, loved, loved it. And then ever since then, I don't think I've gone back to the private sector since then. I think it's either been nonprofit or government.
Yeah. All right. Very cool. We have these last two questions here. Our theme for this season is building bridges and overcoming disagreement. So we've been asking all of our guests to give their opinions on
Mhm,
some ways that they think people who are listening can build bridges with each other and overcome disagreement and
mhm,
kind of
mhm,
like move forward.
mhm, mhm. And that's a tough one, because I probably am not the greatest at confrontation, that type of thing. So I'm going to give a talk personally for my own personal, and
Okay.
then also more larger scale. It's hard, and my being here, I when I was new to the position, not everybody is going to like your approach or your philosophy, and I have turned some people off, and that it is what it is, and not intentionally. But not everybody agrees with my approach. They might have liked the way things were done in the past. And that's hard. It's hard personally to think, that you've kind of done that, but you sort of have to look at the bigger picture.
You got to look at what you're believing in. It's like you're not just making these decisions willy-nilly, like you have
Yeah.
something that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think, going back to Citizens Leadership Academy, people think the city is just out to get them or whatever. No, there are reasons and thought and preparation that goes into everything. Somebody just doesn't wake up one day and say, "We're going to do this." So personally, it's hard, but communication is key, and if you're not willing to talk about something or face it head on, I'm just going to get mad and go away and never talk to you again. That's certainly one approach. It's not
Hmm.
necessarily the most successful. So I think communication is key,
Mhm.
and bringing people together. And if we really look at this a lot at a larger scale, there are efforts. I'm going to take Ireland of all places because I'm Irish. Trying to build those bridges between, say, the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. What are the fundamental differences? How can we bring people together? And there are programs like Friends for International that brings kids from the Republic of Ireland and Northern to get together and realize, hey, we're all people, kind of a thing. But how do you agree to disagree, and how can we live with those agreements?
Mhm.
So I don't have a solution. It's not easy, but I think we all have to work at it every day. Me personally, the chamber, because we're going to make decisions that not everyone is going to agree with. And then just in our personal relationships, but the world at large, we've got to be willing to be open. And I guess that's what I really struggle with. And I could never be a politician because I see everybody's sides. I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Oh, that's a good point. Um, but you've got to be open to that. Like
Mhm.
I said, I don't know everything. I'm not always right, and I don't go around assuming that I'm right and I know everything. And I think so many people get so entrenched in their position, they refuse to
Mhm.
see any other point of view. And some of that, unfortunately, can be if you've never traveled anywhere or gone outside your backyard, you don't realize that things are different in Alabama than they are, and I'm from Boston. It's not the same
Yeah.
Boston as it is in New Hampshire. It's very, very different. But that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I just recently recorded the introduction episode for this season,
Mhm.
and I was having to talk about the theme and what I thought about it, and what you said of like, disagreement's going to be there whenever you come into a place. As soon as you start affecting more than, I don't know, a dozen people, it's once you get bigger than a jury, it's hard to get 100% of people on board of something.
Right.
And so I see what you're saying of like navigating the disagreement and being able to recognize like, hey, we're not going to get everybody to agree. That's
Mhm.
not where we're going. We're just trying to be able to, like you said, agree to disagree.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And not have it either ruin the relationship or,
Hmm.
you know,
Not stop caring about each other.
yeah, yeah.
So our last question is, what do you think Dover, the city of Dover, should focus on next?
Well, immediately we have to focus on turning 400.
Yeah.
That is happening. So lots of celebrations coming up. But less facetiously, going beyond that, the big opportunity at the window is the waterfront development that is going to transform this city.
Okay.
And it's been in the work for decades. You've probably talked to folks about it, but it really now is coming to fruition. This has been probably a 3-decade long dream of the city to develop that property across the Cachiko River,
Yeah.
and it's actually moving ahead, and it's going to be transformative.
Oh, in what ways do you want to talk a little bit about that, or can you? I don't know if it's a secret or not.
Oh, I don't think it's a secret.
All
No, it's
right.
not. No, it's big doings. In fact, one of our annual award winners this year he's volunteer of the year, and he has chaired that committee for years and years and years, and so he's being recognized as volunteer of the year. But no, they've actually got a developer who's coming in, and it's a public-private partnership, and it's going to be mixed use, a lot of open space. It reminds me a little bit of when they developed the seaport in Boston. You took some land that basically people went, "Ooh, the seaport." And now it's this thriving community. But part of it is the public does have to have access to it, similar to what happened up in Meredith here in New Hampshire when all of those hotels went in on the waterfront. The agreement was that the public would still have access. There are those beautiful walkways along. So again, here, there's going to be a lot of public space. It's going to be beautiful space for the public. There's going to be docks to put your kayaks in on the river and all that good stuff. But mixed use in terms of housing, desperately in need of more housing, mixed housing. And then some new retail. I'm not sure if there's going to be a hotel or not. I can't remember if that's in the discussions or not, but potentially. But it's just going to be a beautiful use
Yeah.
of land that is not being used right now, and it's going to extend. Again, the sea, you'll be able to walk right over the bridge, get to the end of Washington, walk right over, and have this incredible
Yeah.
scenario over there.
So focus on making that successful.
Yeah, it's actually happening, but it's not going to happen overnight. But if you're patient, things will come. And it's been 30 years in the making, and it's just an exciting time to be part of Dover.
Yeah.
I'm actually pleased and proud that I'm here at this time to see this come to fruition, because I know it's been the dream of folks here in Dover for many, many years.
All right. Before we close out, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Just to remind folks that the chamber is here. We are not part of the city, but we work very closely with the city, but we operate a wonderful visitors bureau here. If you have folks coming in from out of town and would like some information, come on in and see us. Would love to have you.
All righty. Thank you for listening to the Your City podcast, and I hope you enjoyed our talk today with Margaret. If you enjoyed the show, you can help us out by sharing it with somebody else that you think might enjoy it, a friend, family member, coworker, anyone that you think would enjoy this type of content. We don't spend very much on advertising. It's mostly just word of mouth, and so we will appreciate any word of mouth advertising that you can give us. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.